How is this man gonna miss?
He's not.
How? Someone explain it to me in the chat. How is this man gonna miss?
Travis Scott's new album, Utopia, is out right now, and we just did our live album reaction with our entire community on Patreon. If you guys do want to check it out, check out the link in our pinned comment or in our description, and much love to everyone that was part of the experience. Utopia is finally out, brother. How are you feeling?
Listen, man, this was well worth the wait. I'm going to tell you that right now. It's been 5 years that we've been waiting for this new studio album from Travis Scott, and there was a lot of question marks around the album because people were like, well, is he going to live up to the hype? Is he going to deliver quality? How is this going to be in comparison to Astroworld? Yada, yada, yada. There was all the conversation around it. You and I had those conversations. Everyone else had them. My whole thing was that I wanted to go in with kind of a clear mind because Travis Scott always reinvents himself with every single album. And off of the first listen, because this is a First Thoughts video, right after our first listen, he has reinvented himself. He brought something new to the plate, and that is what I absolutely love about this track list. Honestly, it's so hard to even pinpoint a soundscape that's going on right now. It's so hard to pinpoint a certain style. The only thing that you do know about the track list is that it's very dark, it's very psychedelic. It takes you back maybe to those Owl Pharaoh DBR sort of days where Travis Scott is more, rap-heavy centric on the track list. So how did you like that approach from him?
I absolutely loved it. I think the soundscape is phenomenal. This is futuristic. It's more advanced than any other soundscape you're going to hear in hip-hop in 2023. Starting off with Hyaena, which is the first track. You have this mandolin that's featured throughout the track. You have like these metal strings that are being plucked. It brings you into this tone that is so ominous, so sinister. And I love the fact that you do have different sounds all throughout the album. But I will say this off the top. I don't think this album is for the casual Travis Scott fan, because throughout this album, you're not getting safe songs. You're not getting hits, quote unquote. You're getting these long, drawn out compositions that really take a lot of time for you to sink your teeth into. And I think that's what Travis Scott does so well here, is that he's giving you a lot of reminiscent vibes of maybe the Yeezus era from Kanye West, because you do have these industrial, bombastic types of drum patterns and soundscapes throughout. But overall, he's putting his own flair to it. He's putting his own touch. I think that the way that he collaborates with every single artist on here is fucking incredible. I want to start off talking about Meltdown with Drake.
Yeah, that was an absolute surprise for me because the whole thing was, the news had broke out that Drake was going to be on the album once we had gotten word, I believe, yesterday, because there was this picture posted of a Utopia briefcase that was left at a club, and then Drake reacted to it on his story, and then we were like, oh, well, we're probably going to get a Sicko Mode Part 2. And this is completely different than the song that you end up getting, because you do get a beat switch, and then you do get a certain tempo switch midway throughout the song, but Drake is rapping almost in like his ASMR sort of like
He's whispering, super menacing.
Very menacing, and there might be a couple of disses thrown in that song. I'm just going to say that.
Disses and Pharrell disses, it sounds like.
Maybe. Go through Genius, decipher it for yourself. But regardless, though, what I like about the track list is the variety of different sounds that you're getting. And the only safe song on the album for me, in my opinion, countering your statement before, was K-pop. I think that in the context of the album, I understand it a bit more, it being sort of like the party banger, having that reggaeton vibe and having those fast-paced drums.
But you said that it fit within the album, and I sort of disagree. I feel like K-pop as a dance hall song, we saw Travis Scott take the lead on every single track on here. On K-pop, sort of felt like a Bad Bunny song, and again, the dance hall reggaeton type of vibe just stands out like a sore thumb throughout this track list. Not a bad song by any means, just a bit sleepier, a bit more boring, and again, coming throughout the last, in the last section of the album, it does fit the more lighter and ethereal tones of that latter end, but again, it just doesn't sound like it meshes well with the rest of the sound of the project.
I do agree with you to a certain extent, but regardless, though, I'm still going to be visiting it. But let me talk to you about a couple of songs on here. So let's start off with Lost Forever, right? Because this is the song I've been dying to hear on this album.
Is it your favorite song on the album before you get into it?
No, I don't think it's going to be my favorite song on the album.
I think it's still my favorite. I'm not going to lie.
It's one of my favorites. I will say that. I think it's one of the best off the album. But what's interesting is that it changed from the original snippet that you and I were both familiar with. So obviously you get James Blake that opens up the song. Well, is it James Blake that opens up the song? I don't think he opens up the song anymore, just because they kind of cut down on the intro to a certain extent. Like, it doesn't have that sort of like
I think you still have that James Blake background vocals.
You do, but I think he had more on the snippet, so I feel like they shortened the introduction a bit. Then you get straight into the Travis verse, which didn't change from the snippet. But what's interesting is that The Alchemist actually has a part to play on the second beat switch, which you get on the Westside Gunn feature. And now on the snippet that we were both exposed to beforehand, there's another Travis verse that comes through. So not only do I feel like it's one of the best off the album, but it's low-key improved from the snippet that we heard, because in the context of the song, all of the production switches, all the types of different energy and tempos that you're getting from both Westside Gunn and Travis and James Blake perfectly meshed together for this beautiful middle point between all three artists to create this beautiful aesthetic. But let's talk about God's Country, because this was another song that was previewed at Rolling Loud, and song that was getting a lot of conversation within the community, because people were asking, was Kanye going to be on it? Kanye was unfortunately not on the song.
He wasn't.
Kind of gets me a bit sad. I would have loved to see Kanye on this. But how do you like it? Because this was a grower for you,
It was
brother.
a grower for me. At first, I wasn't a big fan of the la la la, like the whole sample and back. I didn't really fuck with it too much, but in the context of the song, it totally works. It really adds this haunting atmosphere throughout the track, and that's how I feel about a lot of songs on here, like Del Resto, like Modern Jam. I love how patient they are in setting up atmosphere and setting up tone. And yeah, when it comes to God's Country, absolutely love it. Totally fits within the track list. Something else I want to talk about is Fiend featuring Playboy Cardi. None of us expected to see Cardi on here,
Yeah, this is
and
crazy.
he unlocked this new voice, a much deeper voice, contrasting the usual fucking baby voice. And at a certain point, I'm like, is this really Cardi?
That's it.
But you have this rage type of beat. You have this video game-esque soundscape once again, produced by Travis Scott himself, which was a breath of fresh air to see Travis Scott behind the boards once again for this album.
Yeah.
He absolutely understood the assignment. I loved hearing the chemistry between Cardi and Travis Scott on that song. Definitely a big standout for me. Something else that I feel like I want to talk about is the song I Know, which is amazing throughout the keys. Coleman was on the keys on this track. Absolutely killed it. Him and OZ did a great fucking job.
Coleman has 3 production
Coleman
credits on his-
absolutely
Shout out to our
killed
brother
it.
Coleman.
Big friend of the pod, and he absolutely went to work on songs like Meltdown, on I Know, and of course on Schizo with Young Thug, one of my favorite songs. Multiple beat switches on that one. Absolutely catchy hook on I Know as well as on Schizo. And yeah, Schizo was just a fucking showcase of Travis Scott's ability to take us through multiple phases of a song and just keep a song continuously refreshing, bro.
Absolutely. So how did you feel about Travis Scott's influence on the production of this album? Because one complaint I feel like when I was speaking to a couple of different people and producers about Astroworld was that, well, I want to hear more Travis Scott production. He's a fantastic producer. He's done a lot of work for Kanye West. He's done a lot of work for Jay-Z as well. There was a lot of people that were asking for Travis Scott to return behind the boards, and you did get that on songs like example Telekinesis or example songs like Love with Kid Cudi, where you feel like there's this grandiose Yeezus vibe that comes out throughout the track. So how do you feel like that blended in with this dark and psychedelic vibe that's kind of prominent throughout the entire track list of Utopia?
Sounded impeccable. You have a lot of nice live instrumentation. I love the violins at the end of the outro, Till Further Notice. One of the most beautiful, stunning songs from a vocal performance standpoint. Telekinesis was also great. But ultimately, I think that the one sort of disappointment is that I feel like, at least on first listen, the sequencing wasn't as well thought out and as fluid as something like an Astroworld.
That's very
one
true.
thing that I want to mention.
I will say this. I agree with you because the sequencing on Astroworld was absolutely impeccable. But on the flip side, it's sort of like a double-edged sword for me because I love the unpredictability factor of this track list. That's the first thing I caught on to after first listen. Brother, this is just surprise after surprise after surprise after surprise. And this was one thing I was really demanding out of Travis Scott after getting, so many different snippets and so many different teases and so much different conversation around the album was like, well, this is all cool and all, but I want to be surprised going into the album. I want something new. I want something refreshing. And the one thing I could say from my standpoint is that as soon as I entered off in the album, especially after Hyaena and then going off into something like Thank God or even on Modern Jam, these are Travis Scott records that I've never heard in his catalog.
Yes.
And that gets me extremely excited because that's going to up the replay value for me on this album. And to be quite honest with you, there is very few skips, if not any skips on this album.
And that's what we were talking about in the album reaction, is that, like, listening to this, it sounds unlike any other Travis Scott album. He's upping the ante once again. He's reinventing himself after this long hiatus. The tracks are phenomenal. Speaking about the lower points on the album, I think Utopia Twins was the safest song on here. Sort of a predictable, generic trap beat for the most part. 21 Savage absolutely carried it for me. But you did get the second half of the song was great because Travis comes in sounding re-energized, but the hook was a bit weaker. The Rob 49 verse maybe will be a grower for me. Just didn't expect to hear him on the album whatsoever. Another low point was probably the song with Beyonce called Del Resto Echoes. It was just a bit flat for me.
It wasn't that it was a letdown for me. It was just that I could have done without the song, to be quite honest with you. It might be the song I revisit the least on the album, to be quite honest with you. I do like the production. I still think that sort of hint of dark psychedelic trap is prominent within the production, and you do get this sort of Beyonce Renaissance sort of vibe to come in through the track and provide the energy. So I don't have a problem with the record itself. My issue is that there's so many other tracks that I'd rather revisit on the album before that one. So that's what I have to say about that. But let's talk about Till Further Notice, the outro on Utopia. I think that this is easily one of the strongest tracks on the album, just because you have James Blake and 21 Savage coming together with Travis Scott for this epic outro where they're all sharing verses, but they're all taking their time. I like what you said about them being able to be patient and setting up tone and being able to lead you into every track, because throughout every single track, there was the unpredictability factor, but they led you into that. Either if it was, let's say, extended productions at the beginning of the song, or let's say it was starting right off the bat and then having a third or fourth verse that was hidden that you didn't necessarily expect.
Or the reverb or the panning vocals from one side of the headphones to the next. It just left you feeling like you're levitating, which is what Travis Scott is best known for. But ultimately, the review is going to come on Monday for us, where we're going to actually fully flesh out the album.
Come on.
Of course. I just want to sort of wrap up my thoughts in saying that I feel like when it comes to this project, Travis Scott definitely leveled up. He definitely brought us this avant-garde sound, unlike anything you're hearing in hip-hop up to this point. He is a needle mover in terms of giving us a refreshing, unique soundscape. I think this is an album of the year contender. I don't know if it's overscaring the hose, but the pacing of the album was great. I love the long, drawn-out tracks. I love the features. I didn't expect to see Sampha on My Eyes, which was an absolutely beautiful, angelic vocal performance. But
even someone like Tizo Touchdown on Modern Jam was a really big surprise, because at first you think that it's actually an Andre 3K feature because he has the outro on the song, and it gets you wondering, well, is this Andre 3 Stacks? Who the fuck is this? And then you find out that it's actually Tizo Touchdown. You're like, well, that makes perfect sense. But another song that I want to talk to you about, that's why I was kind of scared. I'm like, fuck, you're already wrapping up this video? Come on. Let's talk about Parasail. All right, this is one of my favorite tracks off of the album, because you know how big of a fan I am of songs like, let's say, an Astro Thunder, or let's say a Skeletons. More of those euphoric, moving tracks that kind of put you in that levitating state, that gets you in the paralysis vibe where you're just absolutely locked in on Travis's vocal effects and on the production that's going on. I think this is a lock as one of my favorite songs on the album.
Yeah, and Young Lean being on there totally matched the vibe. The way that he was previously working with Travis on a song like Dubai Shit, he totally fits that psychedelic mold. Another standout, Circus Maximus with The Weeknd and Sway Lee. Absolutely cinematic production all the way through. Amazing performances from everybody involved. Listen, for now, I don't know how I feel overall about the album. It's a lot to take in, but I left feeling inspired, feeling enthusiastic about this new era of Travis Scott, and I can't wait to dive deep and go through it in the whip, bro. I want to bump this in the car, windows down, feel the vibe, soak it all in, you know?
A song that I really want to bump in the whip is actually Sirens. That's something that I really want to get into once the actual album sits with me over the weekend. So, as Lou said, we will be dropping our official review on Monday. Let us know in the comment section, how do you guys like it? And do you think it lived up to the hype? Lou, do you think it lived up to the hype?
I think it did live up to the hype. Travis Scott is back. He delivers once again with Utopia. And guys, as we mentioned earlier, one of the craziest fucking live album reactions we've ever done on the channel. If you guys do want to access our first ever experience with Utopia and our entire community, the link is in the pinned comment and in our description. Much love to everybody. It was a fucking journey covering this Utopia rollout. Over 2 years in the making for us. We finally have it, guys. Let us know your first thoughts on the album in the comments. And if you guys are new here, make sure to subscribe for more Utopia content. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.